School nutrition staff development, HACCP, food safety, and general overview for back to school. A food safety program is effective when each employee knows his or her role and is committed to making it work. What are some things that may cause foodborne illness? Food not cooled properly is the leading cause. Food not heated or cooked to the proper temperature. Food or equipment handled by an infected person who is sick or has poor personal hygiene at home or work. Food prepared a day or more in advance of being served and not held properly. What is CLADD? It stands for CLAD. Cover the food, label the food as to what the product is, the amount of the food that is in the pan, the date the food was prepared, and the date you should use the food, consume it, or discard it. The proper way to store foods that are not in their original packaging. All foods not in their original package are covered and labeled with the amount and date. Proper food covering is a food-grade lid, plastic wrap, or aluminum foil. All leftovers should be clad. Reminder to let this food breathe as it cools by not sealing tightly. If you have a lid placed on it, maybe turn the lid a little bit so some air can breathe out around it. Or if you use aluminum foil or saran wrap, turn one of the edges back so that it can still breathe until it cools to the proper temperature. For your information, per the health inspectors, when pre-prep foods such as corn, let's say you're going to place corn in a pan today for using tomorrow, it's not cooked, you've opened it out of the can has been at room temperature, then you need to clad it, and you do not need to seal it tight until it reaches 41 degrees when it's been placed in the refrigerator. When you're washing produce, you should wash raw fruits and vegetables in cool water before offering for immediate consumption, before cutting, before combining with other ingredients, before cooking, and before serving. Reheating foods. Never use hot holding equipment to reheat TCS foods, which are potentially hazardous food. Examples of hot holding equipment are warming cabinets and serving lines. Don't place foods in the warmers to heat up before placing in ovens. Staff will not know that is what happened, and the food that was improperly heated may be served and cause a foodborne illness. All leftovers must be reheated to 165 degrees Fahrenheit. The proper methods for thawing foods. Only the following methods are used to thaw frozen TCS foods. In a refrigerator at 39 degrees or colder. Thaw raw meats, raw poultry, and raw fish on the lowest shelf to prevent cross-contamination. Under safe running water at 70 degrees Fahrenheit or colder. If using this method, the food must be prepared within 4 hours. During the cooking process or in a microwave oven immediately followed by cooking. Frozen food should never be thawed at room temperature. 1, 2, and 3 are used in the school setting. We do not use the microwave to thaw food in the school setting. Minimum requirements for hot and cold holding. Hot food must be held at 135 degrees or above, and cold food must be held at 41 degrees or below. Always check your temperatures before placing any new food on the serving line. Preventing temperature abuse. Keep TCS foods at 41 degrees or below or 135 degrees or higher. General guidance for food safety. Keep it cold, keep it hot, or don't keep it too long. This means you will use temperature or you'll use TPHC based on the guidance that we provide in your recipe and on your meal production record. At first in, first out, which is FIFO, procedure is used for all frozen, refrigerated, and dry food storage. Label in permanent black marker with the date received, the month, day, and year in a conspicuous location on the package. Have the date facing out in your stock room so staff can easily see what should be used first by the date. Reminder to date mark produce with the month and day. Remind staff to use partial cases first before you open a new case. Also, you should date mark the packages in your freezer and have those dates facing out as well. Cooling temperature requirements. When you cool food at the end of the day that you think you're going to use as a leftover, it must meet certain criteria. You can only cool TCS foods from 135 to 41 degrees or lower in 6 hours. Step 1, food should reach 135 degrees and be cooled to 70 degrees within 2 hours. And then step 2, from 70 degrees to 41 degrees within 4 hours. If food is cooled to 135 to 70 degrees in less than 2 hours, you still have 6 total hours to reach 41 degrees Fahrenheit. Safe cooling procedures is cooling in an ice water bath is the fastest way, then cooling with air in the cooler or your freezer. Properly cooled food can only be kept for 3 days at 41 degrees or below per the school nutrition department. So within 3 days, you will use it as a leftover or you will discard it. Factors affecting cooling: size of the containers. Large, deep containers are slower to cool. Small, shallow containers are faster to cool. Ideally, you want to use a 2 to 3 inch deep pan when cooling food. You place it in an ice bath, and usually you will need to stir the product so that it will cool quicker and change out the ice as it melts. Liquid versus solid. Liquid, such as a broth product, will cool faster. Something that's semi-solid like chili is slower to cool, and if you have like a whole roast that's solid, it takes the longest time to cool. The best cooling procedure is to divide food into smaller portions and replace food in small, shallow containers. Place in an ice water bath, which means that you don't sit a pan of ice on a table, then place another pan with the food in it into that ice bath. Do not cover it tightly, and then you should agitate it. A movement increases cooling, meaning you should come every now and then and stir it so the food that's at the bottom where the ice is now moved to the top. The food at the top is now at the bottom. Monitor the time and temperature with the tip-sensitive digital thermometer. Loosely cover the containers and do stir occasionally, which increases your cooling rate. You will record this information on your hot cooling log. Cool foods should be covered, labeled with the amount of food, name of the food, and the date prepared and the date to discard. Any individually wrapped food items, such as a breakfast biscuit, muffin, etc., or lunch items like pizza, must be removed from the wrapping if they are to be held as a leftover. Record the temperature. It must be at 135 degrees or greater on your meal production record and cooling log. Remove from the wrapping and cool properly. Remember, these items cannot be kept as a leftover if you leave them in their individually wrapped package. TCS foods kept in warming cabinets that meet the criteria to be kept as a leftover may be kept. TPHC foods that were never placed on the serving line may be kept as a leftover. All hot items must be at the proper temperature of 135 degrees Fahrenheit to be saved as a leftover, such as mac and cheese, individually wrapped biscuits, pizza, etc. TCS cold foods must be at 41 degrees Fahrenheit or below to be kept as a leftover. Document your temperatures on the meal production record and the log for cold foods. TPHC food was never placed on the serving line. To minimize leftovers by only cooking what you need is called staggered production. You should only remove as much TCS food from the refrigerator or freezer as can be prepared within 30 minutes. Preparation is defined as cutting, slicing, dicing, breading, or battering. This 30-minute time frame does not include the time needed for cooking. Vacuum packed bags, such as macaroni that comes in a vacuum packed bag, you may heat the food in the bag. But any to be kept as a leftover must be poured out of the bag. You can cool the food down while it's still in the bag, but the food must be removed from the vacuum bag to be kept as a leftover. You can only keep if it's been held at 135 degrees or hotter and cooled properly if you'll use it as a leftover, and you must document the temp on the meal production record in the leftover column and the cooling log. There are 5 different methods for serving ice to the customers. Reminder that ice can be contaminated and must be handled properly. A cooler of ice may be placed in the teacher's lounge. You can fill cups of ice in a single service cups and place a lid on the cup and place cups on the line for self-service and replenish on an as-needed basis. You can fill cups with ice, place the lid on top, and set in the freezer or cooler and service request from the cooler. A clean cooler may be placed behind the serving line, and the cafeteria staff may fill single service cups with a clean scoop. Never fill anyone's personal cup. Ice dispenser on the line is also a good way of serving ice to the customers.